I do want to switch to the piece that you're doing now, the Divided States of Biden. It's a new docuseries over thedailywire.com. Episode 2 focuses on fentanyl. I don't know a person who hasn't been affected by this. I don't know a person who has not. It's either your friend's college kid or your friend's friend's college kid or something you just read in yesterday's paper that you found deeply alarming and had to warn your kids about, but it's come up in most everybody's life. Fentanyl, it's everywhere. It's the new opioid crisis, except it's proving to be even more deadly, and yet not necessarily getting the 5-alarm fire universally among Americans around it that say opioids did once we realized what they were doing to us. So you've taken a deep dive on fentanyl. Can you just like highlight the problem for us? Like when you did, because I know you visited various towns and you actually got your arms around the problem. So just highlight the problem.
Okay, so the problem of fentanyl poisoning, and I'm calling it poisoning here for a reason, and that is a huge number of people who die of fentanyl overdose are not overdosing in the way that you would think of an opioid overdose, where somebody is doing heroin and they actually inject too much heroin and then they die. A lot of people who are dying of fentanyl poisoning don't even realize they're ingesting fentanyl. They think that they're taking a Vicodin, or they think that they are taking a Xanax, or they think they're taking an Adderall, and it turns out that it's laced with a grain of fentanyl. Fentanyl is incredibly cheap. It's incredibly easy to produce. A huge amount of it is moving across our southern border thanks to the Mexican drug cartels, which are getting the precursor materials from the Chinese government, which is shipping it over to Mexico. It is then being created in a lab in Mexico by Chinese nationals, who are then putting it into Chinese-made pill presses. They are then distributing that to the drug cartels, who are taking it across the border and selling it in mass quantities. And it's killing over 100,000 Americans a year. It's now the number one cause of death for Americans between the ages of about 18 and 40, more so than gun wound, more so than car accident. That's how prevalent it is. And again, it's pretty much everywhere. It's very difficult to get your arms around it, specifically because there are so many different versions of fentanyl that are now coming across the border. The easiest thing that needs to be done, obviously, is to close the border, and that's the exact same thing that the Biden administration won't do. So these two issues are deeply intertwined. With an open border, it is literally impossible to stop the fentanyl epidemic from entering the country. And there's a lot of focus in the United States on caring for people who actually become addicted to fentanyl. But the reality is, once you're addicted to fentanyl, it's almost impossible to get off of fentanyl. The amount of the number of people who are fentanyl addicts who end up getting off of fentanyl, the last stats I saw were below 2%, which means there's only one way to stop this, which is to stop it right at the source. And that means you actually have to shut the border. Joe Biden's border policy is dramatically designed to do everything but stop it at the border. I mean, he's leaving the border wide open. I mean, we're talking about like 25-mile stretches. I've driven them, 25-mile stretches, the most heavily trafficked parts of the Arizona border by drug traffickers, completely wide open, totally in the control of the Mexican drug cartels.
So why are they lacing drugs like Adderall and Vicodin with fentanyl?
I mean, the answer for that usually is, if you can get someone to take a little bit, it's incredibly addictive. It's 50 to 100 times more powerful than a typical opioid or heroin. And so that means that if you can get somebody to take a little bit of fentanyl, apparently the high is amazing, but it doesn't last all that long. And now you've got them hooked for life. So that's an acceptable loss for drug dealers. If you can get a teenager hooked on fentanyl, but it means another teenager dies, well, for these drug dealers, that's fine. They're totally okay with that. Some states are doing what they call drug-induced homicide prosecutions, which is something every state should take up. They're basically saying, if you're a drug dealer and you deal somebody fentanyl and the person dies of the fentanyl, we are going to charge you with murder, which is exactly what they should do, as opposed to treating it as kind of a normal drug offense. This sort of weird, hard division that we've made in American criminal law between drug distribution and homicide, that needs to be obliterated when you're talking about a drug as deadly as fentanyl that is being put in, again, things like marijuana. People will be smoking a joint and they'll get fentanyl. And if they have the fentanyl in the marijuana, they can die from that.
You offer the following stat in the piece. In 2022, fentanyl overdose deaths doubled from 2019. I mean, this is becoming more deadly by the minute. And kids who are little right now are aging up into the age where they may make a stupid decision on a college campus, or, you can get these drugs over the internet so easy via Snapchat. You order a drug, it shows up at your house, and you're dead. Your kid is dead over these dumbass decisions that kids used to make. And they weren't smart, but they weren't deadly. And it's happening more and more. It's happening across income strata. I mean, the poor, the rich, all of them are dying from this thing. Are there certain areas that are more problematic than others? Because I know you went to, for example, Camden, New Jersey, which jumped out at me because that's one of those community policing towns that just 5 years ago, they wanted credit for being super safe thanks to their community policing as opposed to just crackdown policing.
Yeah, I mean, what they actually did in Camden is they lied about it. They actually went to the county policing. They said we got rid of our city police, and they just ingested it into the county police. And then now they're actually starting to try to use a little bit of broken windows theory, I think, to try and gain control of the city. But the city's completely out of control. I mean, Camden
they always come back.
is a crime center.
That always fails, and they come back.
That's right. So what you see there in Camden is total open air drug use. You see that in Kensington, obviously. There have been a lot of filming done in Kensington, which is an area of Philadelphia. You make a turn off what looks like a normal street in Kensington onto Kensington Avenue, and suddenly you're going like 2 straight miles of people who are walking around like zombies, openly shooting up on the streets. People who in many cases have open wounds, people who are missing limbs, specifically because in order to keep the high of fentanyl, people have started mixing it with an animal tranquilizer that's known on the street as tranq, and that actually tends to rot your flesh. And so you see like entire city blocks of people, like Phil. It looks like a zombie apocalypse. It's totally crazy. We have some it's of totally that. Insane.
Hold that thought, because we have some of that from the docuseries. Again, this is The Divided States of Biden. You can find it on thedailywire.com. And here's video of Kensington, Pennsylvania, along the lines of what Ben described.
Holy crap. I've never seen anything like this in my life.
This whole block. These blocks of people. Shooting in the knee.
Holy crap. Jesus, help them.
It's just miles of drug addicts, people who are missing limbs and toes and fingers. You're seeing people who are bent over at the waist because the drugs have done such horrific things to their body, they're not capable of standing up straight. It looks like something out of The Walking Dead.
They're shooting up right now. She's shooting right into her foot, and this guy's scratching it where undoubtedly massive flesh wounds from tranq.
Oh my God, it's hard to believe that's the United States of America.
It is. And again, all of this is, in fact, if not preventable, mitigatable. All you have to do is close the southern border. Joe Biden's border policy has been to basically allow the drug cartels to flood one area of the border with illegal immigrants. Joe Biden sends the entire border patrol over to process that group of illegal immigrants, leaving the rest of the border completely unoccupied. And at that point, the Mexican drug cartels will smuggle a few guys over with backpacks filled with fentanyl. Again, this stuff is so powerful. It's so easy to transport. You're talking about tons, literally tons of fentanyl entering the United States every year, and it takes 2 grains of fentanyl to kill somebody.
So what is the solution? You mentioned cracking down on the criminal law on those who would lace a drug with fentanyl without disclosing that. And so, I mean, that's really going after the cartels and I guess those who pimp their poison here domestically, shutting down the border so that this isn't as easy, though that's, of course, easier said than done, no matter who's president, to actually shut it down has proven very problematic for, Republicans and Democrats alike. So what do we do? Is it awareness? Is it like Eric Bolling's
pressure
one pill
tactics
can
on
kill?
China. Yes, I mean, there is going to be more of that. We actually, believe it or not, we actually may be back in terms of drug use to the days of just say no, because there was this long period in American history, mainly when I was growing up and really until now, where I was like, okay, well, it's just a joint. What's the big deal? And the answer right now is that it used to be that if you had a joint, okay, I'm not a big advocate of marijuana. First of all, marijuana now is significantly more powerful than even when I was a kid. But the chances that you may die from taking any street drug just because you don't know the source are so much higher than they have ever been any time in American history that the idea of getting kids away from drugs totally is now a thing. It's going to have to be abstinence from drugs. And then, of course, there's the international stuff you can do. We need to be putting significant financial and economic pressure on China, which is the source of the precursor materials. We put pressure on them not to actually directly manufacture the fentanyl and just send it directly to the Mexican drug cartels. And so they stopped doing that. Instead, they basically took the ingredients and started sending all the ingredients separately to Mexico, where it's then processed in Mexico and then imported into the United States. We need to be taking serious economic measures against China to force Xi to crack down on the fentanyl creation in China.
It really is like playing Russian roulette now. You try a pill, you're really taking your life in your hands. It is not the same as having a beer or, the 1995 version of trying a joint. It's just not. Your kids need to know and you need to know. Again, it's called The Divided States of Biden. And you can check it out at thedailywire.com. As we approach another critical election, many Americans are concerned. Recent studies reveal that an astonishing 56% of citizens report feelings of anxiety or dread about the upcoming election. But look, I want to tell you about AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens. AMAC is more than a senior organization. During these challenging times, they fight for common sense. They're going to help eliminate that dread you're feeling. And they fight for the U.S. to return to traditional American values. Visit amac.us/Megyn today to get an exclusive election year special, a 4-year AMAC membership for just $30. As an AMAC member, you not only enjoy money-saving benefits, but also the AMAC magazine, free Social Security and Medicare advice, a trusted voice in Washington, and a community of like-minded patriots. Take advantage of this election year special, 4 years for $30, and be part of the solution. Join now at amac.us/Megyn. That's amac.us/MEGYN. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.